What's good, YouTube? Man, we back with another reaction video. We about to react to the biggest scandals in sports history. So this should be a good one. Y'all know I always gotta react to the informational videos. Like I be knowing a lot about the certain videos that we be watching, but it be certain stuff that I don't know about. So it's always good to get some info. But all my sports junkies, man, tap in. All my subs, tap in. Like this video up, comment, subscribe. Well, the new watchers, make sure y'all subscribe. We're trying to get the channel to 10K subs. But I ain't gonna talk your ears off, man. With that being said, about to hop right into it, man. Let's get it.
Performance-enhancing drugs, match fixing, bribing, spying, and violence are all topics of this video, where we'll go over some of the biggest scandals in history of major sports. Football. Italian Football League, also known as Serie A, is and always was among the 5 best football leagues in the world. Some of the best players in football history have left a huge mark in Serie A, and names such as Maradona, Ronaldo, Zidane all became superstars while playing in Italy. It was beyond belief that such top-ranked competition might be susceptible to bribes and match fixing, especially in the 21st century. But that's exactly what happened in a scandal known as Calciopoli, which translates to Footballgate. In 2006, the Italian police found out through wiretap that the leading Italian clubs were all participating in the corruption, including referees, league officials, and even the government. Juventus's chief managing director, Luciano Moggi, was the orchestrator of the whole operation, which he led with mafia-like principles. He was in cahoots with the head of the National Referees Association and was able to select refs to referee Juventus's games and for other teams, have games postponed or canceled, and influence and alternate the media coverage to conceal any bias that referees showed towards Juventus. Moggi had a wide and well-orchestrated network of bribes, which kept the whole criminal system running. However, after one of his wiretapped conversations leaked to the media, the crime network unraveled. It showed that team officials of other major teams also had their fingers in the cookie jar. As a result, Juventus was stripped of their titles in 2005 and 2006. They were relegated to the second division, with Lazio and Fiorentina suffering the same fate. Milan, the 4th implicated club, escaped relegation, but they started the next season with a 15-point handicap. Baseball. Baseball is one of the oldest sports of the modern era, and as such, it had several big scandals in its 100-plus-year-old history. Arguably the most famous incident dates over 100 years back.
It was hella scandals in baseball.
Scandals from 1919. It was a game-fixing fraud that happened on the biggest stage, the MLB Finals, the World Series. 8 players from the Chicago White Sox were involved, and they all took a bribe to lose the World Series in favor of the Cincinnati Reds. As a result, all 8 White Sox players were permanently banned from the sport, and due to their crime, the whole team of 1919 was ironically dubbed the Black Sox. In recent history, the baseball world was shaken upside down on a few more occasions. In 1989, Pete Rose was the coach of the Cincinnati Reds, 3 years after he retired as arguably the best hitter in baseball history. Mr. Rose didn't quite get the buzz from being on the sidelines, and he wanted to get more action and stir up the old adrenaline. So, he thought it would be the best idea if he started betting on MLB games, including the ones of his own team, living up to the nickname Charlie Hustle. However, Rose got busted and got permanently banned from the MLB. Then we proceed to 2003 and the Balco doping scandal, with Barry Bonds as one of the main protagonists. Several years, multiple trials, and 100 interviews later, Bonds went from denying it to eventually admitting to using steroids, but he did it unknowingly. In the 2007 Mitchell Report, a 20-month investigation into the use of anabolic steroids and human growth hormone in the MLB, it has been concluded that 89 players were alleged to have used steroids or other performance-enhancing drugs, including Bonds. The time period between the mid-90s and 2010 is now widely regarded as the steroid era in baseball, with many records shattered. However, the PED use in baseball didn't stop there, and in 2013, we had another big scandal in baseball, and another big name in the red. It was discovered that Biogenesis, a Florida-based rejuvenation clinic, had been supplying several Major League Baseball players with human growth hormone and other performance-enhancing drugs. More than a dozen players were penalized, and Alex Rodriguez, arguably the biggest star in the league at the time, got the harshest punishment with a 162-game suspension. And then finally, we have the Houston Astros sign-stealing scandal from 2017. The Astros used a TV camera to record a catcher giving the pitcher signs. Then, the video was decoded on a monitor in the Astros dugout, and a player closest to the monitor would bang on a trash can to alert the batter of the type of pitch. After the testimony of Mike Fears, a pitcher who played for the Astros in 2017 when they won the World Series, the MLB punished the Houston team in 2020. The Astros GM and field manager were banned for a year. They had to forfeit draft picks in the next 2 years and got a maximum $5 million penalty. Cycling. The history of cheating in cycling dates back all the way to the early 20th century, with methods such as illegal towing, taking shortcuts, and even setting up nails on the road to blow up opponents' tires. However, when cheating in cycling is mentioned, everybody first thinks of Lance Armstrong, who took cheating to a whole new level and almost made it into an art form. Armstrong began his cycling career in the early 90s. He was talented, but he was never close to the top, and he soon realized that certain riders have a strange, almost otherworldly strength and endurance on some of the most challenging climbs in the world. He wanted to get into their dirty little club and began working with Dr. Michel Ferrari, who was the Michael Jordan of doping in cycling. With the help of EPO, the doping that increases the number of red cells and provides more oxygen in the blood and thus extracts more energy, Lance began to dominate. The test for EPO wasn't available until 2000, when Lance had already won 1 Tour de France. After that, Armstrong began extracting his blood infused with EPO prior to the competition, and then reinfused it back into his body during the tour to boost his oxygen-carrying capacity and improve stamina. Armstrong had plenty of doctors on the payroll to ensure his hematocrit levels were within the plausible range, and also a lot of top cycling officials who covered him up on a few instances when he exceeded limits. Lance never failed a drug test in his life, which he gladly repeated every time a question popped up about him doping. However, after a lengthy investigation by USADA and testimonies of former teammates, such as Floyd Landis and Tyler Hamilton, Lance was forced to come clean and finally admit he was doping for all 7 of his Tour de France victories. Track and field. American sprinter Carl Lewis won 4 gold in the Olympic Games in Los Angeles in 1984, thus becoming the biggest star in track and field. Canadian Ben Johnson was the new name on the block, and he won 2 bronze medals at the same Olympics. But 1 year later, Johnson defeated Lewis for the first time after 8 straight losses. And from that moment on, one of the greatest rivalries in sprinting was born. Johnson started...
Yeah, man, these boys is wild, man.
over Lewis regularly, and Carl only won in events where Johnson didn't show up. However, they were both incredibly fast, and the media interest for their races was humongous, especially after Lewis managed to finally defeat Johnson for the first time after 4 years and 6 weeks before the Olympics in Seoul. So, when the 1988 Olympics came around, the 100-meter sprint race was the most anticipated sporting event in the world. When the race started, Ben Johnson catapulted from the starting block and devoured the track in an incredible explosion of power, force, and speed. He flew through the finish line with his hand raised and with the watch stopping at an incredible 9.79. It was a world record, and the result was 0.2 better than the time he had achieved 6 weeks earlier.
Crazy.
Johnson was the new king and the new athletic god, but his reign lasted only about 48 hours. And then the horror began, which will forever change the perception and future of the sport. Only 48 hours after the race, it was announced that the anabolic steroid stanozolol was found in his urine. The Olympics virtually stopped. The whole world stopped, and Canada's pride and enthusiasm were replaced by disappointment, even hatred. Ben Johnson had no choice but to admit that he was taking all sorts of pills since 1981, and that his trainer told him, if you don't take it, you won't make it. Ben wasn't the only guy that was on steroids in that 1988 100-meter finals, and I dare to say that probably all or almost all finalists were using the same or similar things as Johnson, as well as the winner of the female 100-meter race, Florence Griffith Joyner. They just didn't get caught because they flushed it out of their system on time, and Ben didn't because he was nursing an injury and had to stay on gear for longer. It was the first major doping scandal in the history of the sport, and the first of many to come, most notable being the Balco scandal. Marion Jones at the forefront. NFL. The NFL has had a lot of player scandals over the years, from Michael Vick staging illegal dogfights, to Ray Rice beating up his fiancée in an elevator, and many other assault charges in between. As a comedian Neil Brennan once joked, "You can't be surprised that football players are violent. Their job is an attempted murder. Whenever there is a domestic violence case in the NFL, all I see is a football player doing football at the wrong time." All joking aside, there have been other notable scandals in the NFL, and somehow they always involved the New England Patriots. Spygate was the scandal from 2007, when a Patriots team videographer recorded New York Jets defensive coordinators from an unauthorized location. The Patriots had a perfect 16-0 record that year, and it's unclear why they would bother with spying anything about the Jets, but they were eventually fined $250,000 and forfeited a first-round pick, and coach Bill Belichick had to pay $500,000. In 2015, the Patriots and their quarterback Tom Brady were in the middle of another scandal, dubbed the Deflategate. The GOAT was throwing footballs that had slightly decreased air pressure, which made them easier to catch. Deflated balls earned Brady a 4-game suspension, and the team forfeited 2 draft picks and was fined $1 million. NBA. Just like the NFL, the NBA league had a lot of scandals that were isolated incidents, like the malice at the Palace, Gilbert Arenas bringing guns to the locker room, or Latrell Sprewell trying to choke his coach to death. There were many incidents of players suspended for using cocaine in the 80s, which culminated in the death of Len Bias, the second pick in the draft, less than 48 hours after he was drafted. The most recent scandal is that of Donald Sterling, who was one of the worst NBA owners in history and who had to sell the Clippers because of his racist comments and was banned from the NBA forever. But in my opinion, the biggest scandal ever was that of Tim Donaghy, the referee who bet on NBA games and who told the world that the NBA referees didn't always prioritize the purity of the game. Donaghy became an NBA ref in 1993, and in 2007, an extensive investigation showed that he bet on over 50% of the games he refereed between 2003 and 2007. Donaghy confessed and admitted receiving $300,000 in exchange for information about the players and the games he was officiating, as well as the information about other referees, whom he accused of officiating the games subjectively, depending on their personal preference of one team or one player. After the trial, Donaghy was sentenced to 15 months in prison. David Stern tried to portray Tim as an isolated case, but at one point, he stressed that the problem was much deeper, meaning that there was probably other stuff that simply got swept under the rug.
Thanks. Yeah, that shit was crazy, bro. That's wild. Yeah, man. That was a good-ass video, man. All my sports junkies and subs, man. Make sure y'all tap in. New watchers, man. Make sure y'all hit that subscribe button. Shit, we gonna be reacting to all type of videos. And if you got a requested reaction that you want me to do, make sure you drop it in the comments. I appreciate everybody that's been tapped in watching. We trying to get to 10K subs. With that being said, man, we gonna wrap this video up. Y'all stay safe, stay tuned, and we out.